We're going to get started here now. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to the board workshop on county program aid and payment in lieu of taxes. This is a topic that we've all been thinking about and talking about for many years, or for a number of years. And we're just excited that we can get some, in-depth information on how we can use this information to our benefit with the legislature, with the revenue that we need, and see what we can do. So courtesy reminder that this board workshop is recorded and it's live streamed on Zoom webinar. There will be no votes taken during this workshop. We're going to start with an introduction of commissioners and the audience that's here, and then we'll begin. So Mary Jo McGuire, Commissioner District 2.
Tara Jevon Singh, Commissioner District 1.
Rafael Ortega, District 5.
Harrison McMurtry, Commissioner District 3.
Kelly Miller, Commissioner District 7.
Tracy West, County Auditor.
Jen Hamrick, Senior Policy Analyst.
Larry Timmerman, Planning Manager.
Pat Chapman, Ramsey County Assessor.
Lynn Becker, County Manager. Rena Moran, Commissioner, District 4.
Jason, what do you do?
Yeah.
Gary Collins, Deputy County Manager, Economic Investment.
Jennifer Rourke, Director of Government Relations. Government Relations.
Michael Silto, Director of Policy and Administrative Strategy.
Marie Savia, Chief of Staff. Nicole Bean, American Indian Community Coordinator.
Veronica Jackson, Race and Health Equity Administrator.
Karen Francois, Deputy County Manager for the Information and Public Records Service.
Ellen Larson, I'm one of Ramsey County's lobbyists at the Capitol. And you're welcome. Alex, the Superintendent Thompson.
You're Deputy County Manager, Housing and Water Services.
Andrew Green, Deputy Staff.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it. So this morning's conversation is intended to be a deep dive into the county program aid and payment in lieu of taxes, or PILT. So these, as I've said before, are previously discussed, and we want to make them a part of our 2026 legislative agenda. So today we're going to focus on learning about the current state of both CPA and PILT, and hear from our staff several options for legislative action to address the issues that are currently impacting Ramsey County's tax base. As we have talked about through the recent budget hearings, there are a lot of added financial pressures on our budget due to shifts in federal and state funding. Our county is in a unique position in several aspects, adding barriers that do not exist in the same ways for our neighboring counties. As we all on the board are committed to meeting the needs of community, this workshop will highlight strategies we can lead to bring in additional revenue from the state to reduce the burden on our levy in future years. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Planning Manager Larry Timmerman to kick off the presentation. Is that correct? Is that just handing it off to you, Larry?
Yes, thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, to our panel here, and also to our Finance Department, our Government Relations Department, and others around the county who have contributed to this work going back a couple of years with our legislative action teams when we first built forward some direction around how can we make this better for Ramsey County and for our property taxpayers. So by way of agenda today, we're going to start with an overview of our property tax base, and even before that, the recommendations we'll have at the end that we'll talk through that are, we'll start with just the basics, and then we'll build through and provide education on county program aid and payment in lieu of taxes. And we'll come back at the end to a broader discussion. So if you have technical questions as we go through, please ask in a moment. We will address them. If it's a broader discussion point on how this all fits together, if we could hold that, that would be probably most helpful to do at the end as we get through all the information. So thank you. And so our panel today is myself, Tracy West, our County Auditor and Property Tax Records and Election Services Director, Pat Chapman, our County Assessor, and Jen Hamrick, Senior Policy Analyst in our office. So I think we can get right into our first slide. So this is not only our first slide, but our last slide. So this version of it is to point out the four areas where, and there's really a fifth too, we'll get into a little bit, but the four areas around county program aid and payment in lieu of taxes specifically, we think there are these. So the first in the A quadrant is the change the tax base equalization formula. So there's two parts to the county program aid formula we'll break down for you. That's the one that particularly hurts Ramsey County. The second option there is to change the existing PILT, and we'll get into this again in more detail. Ramsey County doesn't get a significant amount of PILT right now. And we'll break that down for you and talk to you about where we might be able to change that. The third option in the C quadrant is the create a work group option. That was the closest to happening in legislation, to date. 2 years ago, there was some movement on creating a work group to study CPA. That didn't actually get introduced or get hearings, but it got close, at least in terms of conversation, and was starting to get written up. And the fourth option is to create a new program altogether, and that's where we try to limit the use of the acronym PILT, because PILT is based on acres. It's got a federal and state definition, and Ramsey County being completely built out and developed. There's really no angle for us in a traditional PILT. And so we'll talk to you about what the implications are for that. The fifth option, of course, is to continue to advocate for additional resources for programs. We have, as part of that first, the county program aid formula, the need-based part of the formula, and we'll get into how that benefits Ramsey County a little bit, but also that it is not nearly complete in terms of making us whole for unfunded, underfunded mandates and some of the other work that we have to do.
Yes, questions. Yeah, it's sort of related to the specifics, otherwise the big picture, we're gonna wait till the end.
Okay. For, so for the CPA, we're talking about changing the formula. Can we also do that for the PILT? Because it is about the formula.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Ryan, yes. We'll talk about what that can look like.
Oh,
That's a
okay.
big question. That's a big,
Yeah.
okay, so we'll wait for the presentation, and then afterwards, yeah,
Excellent.
I mean, they're gonna get.
So our next slide is a scale, and on the right side, I'll turn your attention to property tax levy that is elevated here because of the big rectangle boxes that are weighing it down. Ramsey County currently has about a 40%, 46% of our budget is from property tax levy. That's actually going up in our next biennium. You can see the boxes, the ones that are gray in this case are areas we'll touch on, but not specifically the focus of our presentation today. We'll address the lack of development opportunities and the high cost of redevelopment as we go through, and the unfunded and underfunded mandates. Somewhat as we get into this more. An example, on the lower level, the unfunded and underfunded, there's an example that our CFO, Kutzka mentioned during budget hearing for social services, the $16 million that the county pays to the state for the Metro Regional Treatment Center, the Anoka Metro Regional Treatment Center. That's about, that 16 million is of what we get in need-based aid is about 19 million. So just to give you some sense of context, for just how much we do get in aid and what our outgoing costs can be. And that's just one example, there are many more. What we'll focus on today though is the more than 14% in tax exempt property. So Ramsey County stands out there. We're about 14.2% in tax exempt property. Hennepin is next highest, at about 12%. And so we're a little over 2 percentage points higher than Hennepin County. If you take the other 6 metro counties together, they're just over 9% of tax exempt property. So Ramsey really stands out as you look at our regional partners and the amount of tax exempt property, which means properties that we don't collect property taxes on. And then tax-based equalization formula, as I said, we'll get into this in more detail in subsequent slides. It's the part of the formula where Ramsey County does the worst in this CPA formula. So the other future pressures, and we didn't include them in this way down here, you can see on the left side, the federal pressures, and County Manager Becker has spoken to this as the perfect storm. The $1 trillion shift over 10 years to local and state and local governments from the federal government. And in addition to that, the pressure from the Minnesota state budget deficit that we're looking at in the next planning. So there are additional pressures just even to the ones that we have here in Ramsey County.
I have a real
Yeah,
specific
yeah.
question.
Commissioner
This is something I would love to see if we have it in big buckets. Do we have a table that would have something like, here's the specific mandate? Here's the cost for Ramsey County to provide that service. Here are the actual funds we receive and here's the difference, even in big buckets, so we could explain that to folks. Do we have something like that?
I could speak to at a higher level, slightly higher, I think, than where you're going with it, Commissioner, Madam Chair, Commissioner. We have some of that, so in like bigger buckets. As we get further into the details, it's a little more complicated to
Mhm.
parse out. I've been a part of some of those exercises. I'll let County Manager Becker address that too. There's, but at like for a talking point exercise to say, these are the areas where that is most prevalent. Yes.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, I think there's, Commissioner, I think there's a lot we can do with this. I was just sending a note to a couple of people on our team is that I think this is a good baseline for us to start telling our story. And then from there, I think we can add some additional detail to each of those boxes, right? Because I was actually thinking about talking to Carrie about how we can balance like, you know, the development and like, how do we sort of start to shift that balance to be more equitable than by strategies and work inside each of those. So I think this is the start of telling our story better, and then also part of a work plan of how, you know, what are our strategies around each of these things that, you know, tilt
Yeah.
inequitably so that we can be more balanced, you know, around.
And I
So-
appreciate that because there's the, what can we be doing?
Mhm.
What is within our control to be moved forward as tight, efficient and effective as an organization? And then what do we need help from our partners as far as,
Mhm.
yeah, that's what. thank you.
Well, I mean, one really good example is we move on our legislative strategy next week is talk about bonding and our request for, you know, Parker River's Edge. I mean, that right there would, that type of legislative investment would start to help ease the balance a bit, you know? So really being able to pinpoint the strategies to making sure that we're balancing that inequity is gonna be a good strategy for us, so.
Thank you.
And you may be getting to this, but when you said, are we the highest in tax exempt property? Does that not include like all the forests and everything in our, like St. Louis County? They have tons of forests, so that's not really taxable either. So you're gonna get into that difference maybe with, because that's more pilt than more tax exempt. So I think we'll just wanna know that difference, because otherwise I'd like to see a chart where we do have the most tax exempt, you know, buildings for sure, I think, and all of that. So just a little bit more detail on that bucket would be helpful too.
And Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes.
Okay.
So where Ramsey County stands out is in the metro region as the highest.
Oh, I see.
We're also one of the higher counties in the state. So even at some of where you're speaking of the open spaces that do receive PILT, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But so there's some distinctions to be made around that, but we can certainly get you the county breakdown for tax exempt property and you'll see that Ramsey is still disadvantaged in that way.
Right. Okay.
So the next slide, we'll turn to our county auditor, Director West.
Thank you, Larry. All right, so I'll briefly touch on levy as a percentage of total budget. So Ramsey County is more reliant on property taxes as a percentage of total budget than the national average and also other counties within the Minneapolis-St. Paul region. So Ramsey County is sitting roughly at 46% of property tax as a percentage of total budget. And the national average is about 26% of total budget. Hennepin County in 2025, they were about 32%, but for the 2026 budget, they have increased to about 48%. Where Hennepin County for 2026 is sitting at about 36%. So as expenses continue to rise, this puts pressure on our revenue sources. So if other sources of revenue are decreasing, we're only going to become more reliant on property taxes to fund our expenses.
Wow. That would be a great chart too, about with other counties.
Yeah. Next slide, I'm gonna pass it on to Pat Chapman.
Good morning, everybody. We've seen this slide before, but we're gonna take another cut at it. Here, we're talking about estimated market value and how it translates to tax capacity or the ability of a property to produce tax. You can see on the left for 2025, the value, the piece of the pie that we pulled out there is the exempt piece, which is 14% of our total value of our county. But that produces obviously 0% of our tax capacity as they are exempt from tax. One note I want to make on this, when we're talking, and this is the very beginning of the conversation. As we develop this conversation and people are thinking about solutions, one thing to keep in mind is that the assessor's office has to value and classify every property, whether it's taxable or exempt. Then we exempt it from taxation. So we do have data on what a building class would be if it were not exempt. So any kind of hypothetical things that we look at, we do have data to create things in that vein to show a picture of what we're trying to develop. And I just wanted to make that point clear as you guys think, and you think of ways and think that maybe this data would be too hard to do, reach out because it may not be. So
That's helpful.
I just wanted to make that point. Let's go to the next slide, please. And here's a percent of EMV that's exempt from tax. You can see Washington, Scott, Harvard, Dakota, and Anoka all are around that, 8%, Dakota's as low as 5% there, and then there we are at 14.23%. Now, we have a lot of exempt in our county, and unlike greater Minnesota, our exemption is of buildings and things that are being used. So let's make the analysts of a county with a large park in it. They get a PILT payment for all of those acres that the residents of the county use. Now, ours is much more concentrated, and our park is the Capitol complex. That is not great in acreage, but it is great in square footage. And it serves the residents of Minnesota similarly to a park in a different vein where it's the hub of government for our state, where all 87 counties are a participant and all 87 counties are a user. So to frame that conversation, you can see that, yes, we're very high at 14% in our region. We're a little more than Hennepin, but we're kind of around almost that double of the rest of the counties in the area. Now, we do have a lot of schools and great, great assets as a result of that, but that still is a fact.
Chair.
Oh, sorry, I'm the chair. Yeah.
And
Commissioner Jevon Singh.
I just wanna underline, you and I have had these conversations as well, that the difference too is that having grown up in a rural area, the difference of the acreage that has buildings and people and services means that there are also strain on our Ramsey County systems, meaning that those people park, they need to be, there's safety issues, they are the people who come in and out who then use all of our other services. Like it's a little different than tending to acreage or forest or things like that. The people that are involved with these buildings also become part of our greater burden or responsibility and pleasure, right? To have them here in our space, but there are costs associated with that.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, great point. Yep, unlike a park, our park, the Capitol complex, is a high service area. We'll go to the next slide, and this kind of frames it up. I got a couple different cuts at this for the visual learners in our office or in our audience like I am. So as you can see, this is a heat map that shows you the percentage of value that is exempted. The darker the purple, the higher the value, but anything with a color on it is an exempt property in an area downtown St. Paul, as you can see. The crosshatch on there is state-owned exempt property. So you can see there's kind of a donut effect around our whole downtown where the edges are exempt, but if you go to that north kind of west area, the upper middle left, you can see there's the Capitol complex with the cross hatching. And so we're talking about not a significant geographic area, but a significant area nonetheless, especially when we start talking about value estimates of those properties in that area. And the size of Ramsey County, we are a condensed county, we're very tight geographically. All of our redevelopment, I'm not gonna say all, most of our redevelopment happens through removing something and adding something new or changing something from one thing to another. And that's all costly development. We don't have a giant tracts of vacant land to develop, so this becomes kind of our paradigm.
Commissioner McMurtry.
Yeah, so quick question, what is the percentage of downtown St. Paul that is tax exempt?
The percentage. I will get that exact number to you, Commissioner, because I don't want to misspeak.
St. Paul in general is 18%.
The city of St. Paul, but if you just want
Just
downtown,
downtown, yeah.
I think it's significantly higher than that. The city is like 18, and I could quote you a number that's in my head, but I'm not 100% of it,
Gotcha.
so I don't want to, but it's significantly higher than 20%.
Okay.
Mhm. So let's go to the next slide and kind of focus in on what we're talking about when we're kind of talking about the Minnesota Capitol Complex. This is a map off of their website, and you can kind of see the buildings listed out there. And so as we're formulating ways to talk about this issue, one of the things that would have to be fleshed out in any proposal or thing that we're trying to move forward is what buildings are in, what buildings are out. I think the only one that's really for question here is they don't consider the St. Paul Armory building inside of the Capitol complex. It's a state-owned building right next to there. It uses a state asset. So in all of my analysis later on in the presentation that you guys see, the St. Paul Armory is included as part of the Capitol complex. So, but you can see there's very little things to, these buildings are pretty easy to do.
Sorry, who makes that determination?
They just had it on their map, and so I wanted to point it out that it's gray there instead of red. So in their view of their Capitol complex at the state, it wasn't a part, but when I give you all the data that we're talking about later, just know that I included that building.
Is it because they think it might be federal? Is that why they say it's not state?
I have no idea what their thinking was, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
So, okay.
But I just wanted to clarify the
Yeah.
parameters of what I'm talking to
Thank
you
you.
about, so that you guys had. I've kind of made the point about this is, you know, the way to look at this is kind of as a park or a state asset, really. You know, I'm using the park language just to try to paint the picture in the mind's eye, but this is really a state asset area from the judicial building. The Stassen building, we all know, is the Department of Revenue. We got the health building there. We've got, you know, the new administrative and state office complexes that they've made significant investment into. Ramsey County plays a significant role in supporting all of these buildings. So I think, who do I pass it to, Larry?
Back to me.
Back to Larry. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Moran.
Thank you. I didn't see the Senate office building on there.
Was it just to the north, Commissioner, or Madam
I
Chair?
don't see it
Commissioner?
listed. No.
Was listed on
Is
the
it-
right side, it's the fourth from the
Fourth from the
bottom.
bottom.
Mhm.
Minnesota Senate, okay.
Yeah, and I think it's straight to the north of the Capitol. Where did they put that? Oh, it's the,
And it's next to the red state office.
yeah, red state office there. It's right behind there. There's a little vacant area there. That's where I think it literally resides right now,
Okay.
Madam Commissioner.
Read this way. Thank you.
Mhm.
So we're gonna turn to the actual county program aid formula as it is in state law, now and for the last about decade. And so the CPA formula, provides resources from the state general fund to all 87 counties. So there are no counties who don't receive county program aid. That's different from the LGA formula where there are cities who don't receive LGA. Another point I'd like to make about the CPA formula is it's not that complicated. The LGA formula is, and so the CPA formula, as you get into it, is really quite simple. It's got two sides to it. The county need aid, which is the total population age 65 or older. So your proportion of the county's age 65 and older population, the number of households receiving SNAP or food support, and the total number of violent and property crimes in the county. So that's the need-based side of the formula. And as a collective group, as we've analyzed CPA, there are opportunities to work on that side, but it doesn't hurt us in the way that the tax-based equalization aid, the other part of it does. We get a reasonably close amount from the need-based side. So we've really focused on the tax-based equalization aid side. If we were to take option D, the option to rethink the whole formula, there would be opportunity to look more into that county need-based aid too. But on the tax-based equalization side, it's based on the county's population and certified adjusted net tax capacity. So just at its core, it's telling you this is about tax-based capacity, right? So if you have a lower tax-based capacity, you should get more of this. So just keep that in mind. Compares numbers to what the county received in prior years. So you can't go too much below what you were. There's a threshold that if you're going down in this formula, you'll stay at that threshold and you'll only go down incrementally. And provides more aid to counties that have lower tax bases. Again, reference to counties should receive more if they have lower tax bases. So on the next slide, there's this other part to the formula that is where Ramsey County gets hurt. So this formula has 3 or 4 different thresholds for a factor that is there's a multiplier to the outcome of the formula. So if you're a county with 10,000 or less than 10,000 people, you get 3 times the outcome of the formula. If you're in this narrow band between 10,000 and 12,500, you get twice as much. Most of all the rest of the counties get the outcome, which is anyone with 12,500 people or more, which is most of Minnesota's counties, except for in the red, the 2 counties that have 500,000 or more people. And of course, that's Ramsey and Hennepin County. And at the end of the entire formula, we get 25% of the output of the formula. And so that's really where we get hurt in this formula. There is an effort to balance out the adjusted net tax capacity as part of the formula, but it's a modest part when you factor in, we only get 25% in the end. And in the next slide, you'll see what that looks like. So I'll turn your attention first to the green column. Ramsey County these are the 12 highest population counties in the state of Minnesota. Ramsey County's adjusted net tax capacity per person is 10th out of 12. So that's $1,622 per person. You can see in the column ANTC, that's 2022. It's the most recent posted on the Department of Revenue. We have just over 900 million in adjusted net tax capacity. I do want to highlight here, Hennepin's is over 3 times as much. And so you can also see that Dakota's is about just over 40 million less, but growing more quickly. So it's quickly catching Ramsey County.
Okay. Commissioner Moran.
In basic English,
Yep.
why? What does this mean? And what do we need to do?
In basic English, the multiplier effect on the county program aid formula does not do what it's intended to do. It takes resources away from Ramsey County off the top. So on the far right, you can see if you live in Ramsey County, you get $12 out of this formula. If you live in Dakota County, you get $41. So if you move across the border, you're going to get more from this formula than if you live in Ramsey County. That's the easiest way to think about how this formula works. And if you live in Hennepin County, you get the least. That's mostly because they have the highest adjusted net tax capacity, so they get less from that part of the formula, but they also get trimmed down to 25%.
But they definitely get more than us. So I want to go back to the slide before this one.
No,
And if you know any of the backstory about why we're doing it this way, why, I feel like Ramsey County has been thrown under the bus somewhere along the way. We didn't have enough advocacy or something happening here.
They didn't have enough money in the formula. They only had so much money they could get out of the legislature, and so they factored, this is what I've heard. Well, you can tell me too, but this is, because I've asked, what the heck? And, we all had a conference, we all had a meeting on this. I know that when Ryan was county manager, he met with Julie Ring, and they, I don't know who was all in that meeting, I was not, but they talked about that we were gonna try and do something about this CPA formula.
Who's gonna
But
try?
this is Ramsey County, we wanted to do something about it. And if we readjusted the whole formula, that means every other county gets less. If you don't put more money in the formula, every other county gets less. So they don't have the capacity that we do, they said in other formulas, there's other ways that we get money and they have this basic, they have the minimum that every county gets. Like, so every county gets some, because every county needs county program aid. We just didn't have enough in the formula, and that's why I think they took this out. I mean, I don't know all the details, that's what we wanna find out. That's what I've been told, and I was gonna ask that same question. But do you have any more you wanna say? This is the big conversation we're gonna have.
Before I forget my thought.
Yeah, then we're
Remember
gonna,
that they said we don't have enough money in the formula. Who was the they?
the
And then
legislature.
the legislature. And so, but still, why did it disproportionately impact Ramsey County? Like, with what they have there, because someone created
Because it
the
was the two
formula.
biggest counties, right? And when it was a legislature that wasn't favorable to the two big counties, you know that.
Hold
that-
that, hold your
right,
thoughts.
we know this,
Hold your thoughts.
yeah. But what do you think?
so Madam Chair, Commissioner, I can tell you what I am aware of, and
Okay.
there's a lot of this is conversational and it's not really well documented, but the easy through line is the history of county program aid.
Mhm.
So you'll see when we show you how much Ramsey County receives, it's pretty flat, right? So they had a certain amount of money. This is where Commissioner McGuire is spot on, that there was a certain amount. The formula retrofitted that to make it
Here's
more balanced for parts of the state, so it wouldn't be too volatile. And you can see that in the smaller counties, the 3 times the rate. So it was supposed to make it more, I don't know if it's the right way to frame this, but equalized over time. And to balance all of that out, Ramsey and Hennepin County got the 0.25, and that meant that we had a pretty similar amount to the previous formula, and we'll show you that.
Mhm.
But that means that the previous formula was not adequately funding Ramsey County. So the
Right, from the
point I think
beginning,
that is
that's the
really
point.
important,
That's
that is not to be
Right.
missed,
Right.
is just recreating a formula to retrofit a previous wrong is not going to make it right. And that's where we're at in this formula, in that it's essentially extended out Ramsey County getting less than it should from this formula.
So what do we do? Because you sound hopeless over here.
That's the basis of this workshop. We're gonna talk
Madam
about.
Chair,
what we can do.
Commissioner,
Yeah,
please don't think of it as hopeless. There's,
Yes, let's-
we
let's-
have
let's-
opportunity.
This is what we're gonna talk
We're gonna
about.
find some opportunity here.
Yeah.
Right.
We're gonna talk
So-
about that. That's the big picture.
And I
That's the
think
big
just,
question. We're gonna
just-
talk about, but we wanted you to finish your presentation, and then we're gonna talk about, okay, what do we do about it? But we can get some more clarifying, because that is the conversation we're gonna have. What do we do about it? All right, Commissioner McMurtry, McMurtry, then Ortega. I don't know who raised their hand.
So looking at the current list of the counties, and the current formula. Dakota County is right on the cusp, so once they hit 500,000,
They're good.
they're gonna see a big drop, is that right?
that's correct, Commissioner.
And what I understand is it's not for 10 more years. If it was sooner, we'd have an ally.
Mhm.
They know it's coming. So counties are, only because I've had this conversation with Julie Ring at AMC. I said, we gotta do something. And she says, well, and Coda's not, it's 10 years away, but I think we will. I don't know that we don't have an ally in Julie Ring, because it disrupts all the other counties if we don't get more money in this formula. But yes, Dakota County is gonna be close.
but I understand not for another 10 years.
And Madam Chair, Commissioner, there's different projections for Dakota
Okay.
County's population growth is accelerated, but the demographer would have it in the mid-2030s. It may be sooner than that. I think that what shouldn't be lost, though, is waiting for another county to hit 500,000 is not a strategy.
No.
Yeah, it's not a strategy.
So.
Right, I agree.
And why is it the 500,000?
I agree. If more counties would hit it faster, we would, might be a strategy, but it's.
And we haven't included that for that reason.
Yeah.
The real truth here is that this formula formalized something that had been happening for a lot longer. And did it in such a way that was unclear at the time, and it's just continuing to be this every year, and we'll show what that looks like
I
here.
did my thoughts, but
Just.
Okay, first, sorry, Commissioner Ortega, then Commissioner Gibbonson.
I have a question, so where have we spoken with Hennepin? I mean, it seems like they would be, first of all, they have the largest delegation.
Mhm.
In my thinking, anyway, and I'm wondering, have we had conversations with Hennepin?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, I'll just speak to one piece of that, and General Rourke may want to, our Government Relations Director, address that too. AMC did convene a gathering of counties, so there was never a legislative mandate to do it, AMC did that. And Hennepin has participated in it's not been a regular convening, but there have been conversations that Hennepin has been a part of.
So what happened?
And at
Talk is cheap.
Yeah.
this point,
Anything come out of it?
nothing has happened.
We're gonna talk about all these strategies. Let's let them finish this presentation, but
Yeah.
yes.
I'll
What
pause my question.
I understand is that it was just.
Go ahead,
No, I'm gonna pause my question. I
Okay.
think it'll be addressed.
Okay, so let's finish, but yes, these are all really the questions we're here for.
Yes, so I think we can go to the next slide. So this is some history, and this goes back to when the formula was last reported, broken out as need and tax-based equalization. And we could do math to go back a little bit further because this formula goes back to 2016. But what I want to call your attention to on the right side of this slide are the green bars. That is the aggregate of not inflation adjusted county program aid that Ramsey County never realized. So we did not receive the 136 million over the last 8 years. Is that 8 years up there? That we would have otherwise realized if there weren't the 0.25 multiplier. And that's about 150 million if you adjust for inflation over that period of time. It's $20 million a year is the easiest math to offer on what that looks like. So our county program aid tax-based equalization formula, if we were treated like all of our suburban neighbors and friends, would be 27 million. It's more like 7 million. We get essentially 1/4 of that output.
So that was,
Commissioner Jevonsing.
that was actually my question is, what is our current annual? How much is it? How much do we, you said 7 million?
Yes, we get about 7 million in that part of that side of the formula,
And versus the 27 if we were like our neighboring county.
or 28-ish.
If we was treated fairly.
Yep, it would be 4 times the number that we receive. There's some caveats to that because there's some carve outs in the part where it keeps counties from losing too much in any given year, which has never been something that's benefited Ramsey either, but this. So it's about that. The math is really 4 to 1. So the left side really just pulls it out. So you can see on the left side, the county need aid is the first part of it. That's been something that where Ramsey has done about where we'd expect to. The tax-based equalization is what we actually receive is in the lighter purple, and then what it would be in the green if it were the full. And so it's another way of looking at the right side. So you can see it pulled out, but that's really at its core, what we're talking about is if we were any other county in the state of Minnesota besides Hennepin and Ramsey, we would have received the 136 million over that period of years. And so every year it's about 20 million. Which is 4.
So.
Commissioner McMurtry.
So the 7 million that you mentioned, was that just for the tax base equalization, or is that tax base equalization and the county need aid?
That is just the tax-based equalization. The county need aid is a little under 20 million a year. Yeah, it's about 19 million, I believe, this year.
Okay, and
So
that
that
is on
plus-
par with what we should be getting for on the county need aid side?
So the aggregate of the two is 26 million, about 26 million, and about 7 of that is the tax base equalization.
Gotcha.
There's actually more money in the tax base equalization side of the formula than there is in the need based. So on that point, I just want to make this here now, since we're on it. In the next slide, we'll get into this a little bit more, 2 slides from now. If we have to cut county program aid, it should come from the tax base equalization side. It's the part where Ramsey and Hennepin are cut. So it would have much less impact if the legislature does turn to this formula as they do in times of deficit. And we'll address that a little bit in a couple slides.
Yeah, Commissioner Ortega.
So the flip side of the coin would be. Maybe a strategy would be to increase the need side,
Yes, Commissioner.
because that would benefit both Ramsey and Hennepin.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Ortega, that's correct.
Okay. I'm just looking at quite frankly, at the size of the delegation and also the fact that they tend to be, they tend to get what they want, so.
You see.
So the next slide, commissioners, is just a look back at the closest version of a proposal that had conversation amongst some of our delegation, and this was a proposal from 2 years ago. So it was to address some of what Commissioner McGuire was speaking to at the outset. We recognize that if Ramsey County were to be whole in this formula, it would either require adding resources to the formula or taking away from others, and it would take away from all of the others because it's that amount.
They would get probably almost nothing.
And so
Very
at that point in time, we were proposing a phase in. And honestly, anything that gets us to whole over time is better than the conversation where it's been stalled, which is that we continue to get the multiplier effect. So I just wanted to show you this because this is where we were a couple of years ago when we had our legislative action team come together and we first started a push out around program aid, and this isn't equitable or fair to Ramsey County property taxpayers. And the next slide is to show you what happens to this formula over time. And this, I think, is really important because you can see at the moments in time where there have been deficits at the legislature, they have looked to county program aid for reduction and the city's aid as well. So you can see at the time, you can see where the time is. It was Great Recession, 2 reductions, significant reductions. They were a little shallower for Ramsey County because the formula doesn't hurt it. The formula already hurts us. So you can see that play out here. And then as you look to 2026, where we're currently at, Ramsey County is 10% of the state population, and with recognizable need areas that are greater than average in the state of Minnesota, we do not get 10% of this formula. And that's all for all the reasons we've talked about. Need we do okay in, this tax base equalization really takes away from the total, which if we got everything and didn't have the multiplier would be closer to 46 million. And that would make more sense against the 340 that's offered to the 87 counties.
If we were to just make us equal in the formula and we didn't increase money into the pot, I wish I could, we're gonna work as hard as we can to get more money in this pot, but the legislature has not necessarily been receptive to this. This is a really hard thing. We have a big delegation and we should keep trying. We are gonna keep trying, but if we don't put more money in the pot and if we just use whatever money's there and we equalize this formula, the smaller counties who aren't getting that much are gonna get way less. And I don't really care as much about them. I care most about us, but we would arguably they'll charge little if we equalize the form, we change so get something and we get something. Is there a chart that shows that? I mean, I'm just curious. I don't think it's a good strategy to throw out everybody or to, so Hennepin and Ramsey can get what they want out of the formula. I'm just curious if we have a chart of that.
Madam Chair, just to address that head on,
Yeah.
We created something like that early. It's helpful for us to talk about like what that could look like because that's what that's the response we get when we talk about it. Reduce others, we could create that.
Okay,
Just create something like that to show you, just to give you a sense. But you're right, it does have a really dramatic effect because the Hennepin and Ramsey effect on that reduces everyone else, and what they currently receive.
I would like to know, it may reduce it, but what does that reduction look like in reality, not what we, right?
Yeah.
In real time.
Commissioner Miller.
Okay, and this may be a silly question, but can you remind me? This funding is from the state, from taxpayers.
Chair Commissioner, yes.
So Ramsey County essentially pays into this pot more than what we receive.
Commissioner, yeah, it's a little more yes, I believe that is true, but it's not a direct piece, so this comes out of the general fund, and you're correct, like the taxes from Ramsey County would be, that's the correct word here, are at least partly funding some of the rest of the formula.
Okay.
And I don't wanna get too far into it, cause that's a much more complex, discussion, and then.
Well, I was thinking you mean hit like double, yeah, right, like as taxpayers, are we being?
Remember, the state of Minnesota does its income
Alex,
tax.
you wanna speak louder enough?
Sorry,
Everybody can hear.
So the state of Minnesota is income tax based, so we do property tax at the local jurisdictions, and the state has a property tax, or the income tax.
Okay.
And so the income tax from all over the state is pooled into the state, and that's their main source of revenue. I was just talking to our government relations folks, there is a calculation out there, I'd have to go look for how much Ramsey County puts into the income tax and how much we get out of the state budget, and typically we do not get out. Metro areas typically do not get out as much as they put in, because your metro areas are your driving economic force for income tax. The higher income folks that are taxed are typically in your metro areas. And so we usually you see metro areas putting in way more in an income tax than they get out. I will look into that further. But it's across so many different programs, right? And how the money flows that way. But I just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Alex.
So you're next, Commissioner McMurtry, then Commissioner.
So in the current tax base equalization formula, is there a component around property exemption, like the folks who have a percentage of their counties that are exempt from taxes? Is that already incorporated in formula?
Commissioner, it's not, other than it's a population base, so it's your total adjusted net tax capacity, which already removes out the exempt property, so that value total that you see there already recognizes that the tax exempt property is not included, so it's the taxable property per capita. So in a sense, that does lower for Ramsey County, because we have a higher rate of tax exempt property. There is a factor of that shows, but that shows in the per capita.
Gotcha, okay.
And that's true for other counties with that, anything that has, if it's higher exemptions, as an example, or lower values, would play out in that. That entire formula is intended to highlight, though, the adjusted net tax capacity, and to move resources to the counties that are lower in that output. And where it's not doing that really clearly is for us.
So is that a component of the formula that we need to add into this? Because I'm just trying to understand if there is a way, especially when we speak to the tax exempt properties in Ramsey County, for us to incorporate that impact into that formula, so that we're seeing more funds coming in reflected of, that lack of net tax capacity that's coming in.
I think, Chair, Commissioner, the easiest way to answer that is after we hear from Jen Hamrick around the PILT component, and some of the options around payment in lieu of taxes, or the work that we could do there, and how that would work with changes to county program aid.
Gotcha.
So I think if we could just get through the next section, then we could come back to that as a full discussion. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. So, okay, so we know this is coming. So Commissioner Moran, knowing that this is all still coming.
So one of the things that we always talk about, what they always talk about at the legislature, is that the urban core is supporting rural Minnesota, which is a fact.
Which is a fact.
Right, we've been doing it ever since, right? We are, and so I think as we think about the story that we're telling, as we, we have always wanted to support and help other counties across this state. That's what we do. But at the end of the day, we're being challenged too, as we support services from around the state of people coming to Ramsey County and the impacts that's having on our taxpayers. And so I think it's worth, creating something that we can share and show that story. Because right now, it's a clear inequity that we're seeing in the distribution of revenue back into Ramsey County. To make the case for what we're saying here, which is really important that we can see if we make it a little bit more fair. We're not asking for all, probably, we could start with what we all need and then negotiate down, but it's really important that we can show and share and tell that story as other counties in rural Minnesota thinks about, because they're not gonna expand the pot. Right, and now they're saying, oh, we'll get less money, and so y'all just stay where y'all are because, but we need to be able to show that and share that story, right? Because we are being left out, or we have to make some other really hard decisions around how Ramsey County show up to support the rest of the state. We don't turn nobody away. We do services for whoever coming to St. Paul. And maybe that narrative needs to change, because we've been left out. We've been left out of a really fair share, but continue to support the whole state.
Chair,
Commissioner Jevons,
sorry, there's a graph that I've seen of Ramsey County that has the tax capacity with the bar chart coming up that shows the density of Ramsey County, of our downtown compared to our suburban areas. Do we have that for the state of Minnesota? Because that would be a visual that would, to Commissioner Moran's point, to be able to show Minneapolis, the core of our urban areas compared to the rest of the state. That would be an immediate visual to emphasize Commissioner Moran's point.
Okay, all good questions, and we just would hope that the entire legislature would feel our pain as much as we are, and they don't. So, we obviously have to rely on our own delegation for that, and we will, for sure, but yes.
So Madam Chair,
Yes.
Commissioners acknowledge, and yes, I think we can get something together on both of those fronts, so. And
Okay, thank you. It's all good. Keep these thoughts coming. We're gonna be really having a good discussion on this after we hear about payment in lieu of taxes. Thank you.
So we're gonna switch here and talk about payment in lieu of taxes, PILT. And to start with just a little bit of an overview to make sure we're all kind of grounded in the several different types of PILTs that exist. So on this chart, we see kind of four main different areas. The first one being federal PILT. And so this is payments to counties for eligible federally owned property. So about $6 million comes to Minnesota counties from federal PILT. Ramsey County does not currently get any federal PILT funding. Yeah, and so this is based off of land acreage for eligible land. So national parks, Bureau of Land Management, other federally owned property.
Not even for the Mississippi River, which we have running through us.
So we do have 81 eligible federal acres in Ramsey County, but that does not equate to very much PILT funding. And so the process to get that isn't worth the amount in which we would get. So there are some pieces that we do have, we're just not currently getting the funding for it.
So what we can make an assumption is that rural Minnesota is getting federal dollars on top of state dollars. Okay.
We have a couple
Let's do it that way.
coming up, but yes, there are other parts of the state that are getting substantially more federal PILT money than Ramsey or the metro area. And so this is based off of acreage, and so there's a formula of how much counties get across the country based off of acreage. And so we'll see kind of across Minnesota, it's the counties that have larger land areas as well as Nationally, it's mostly the western states who get the most amount of PILT funding because they have the biggest national parks as well as the biggest open federal lands. We also have our state of Minnesota PILT, and so this is payments to county for eligible state-owned property within their jurisdictions. So eligible land here includes natural resources, wetlands, the Lake Vermilion mine. This is also based off of acreage, and we see on the slide there in 2025, Ramsey County received $172,000, which is pretty average for the past 5 years, is right around like that amount that we've been getting.
How much,
Commissioner
how much
Dickinson.
went to the state total? The state
It's like
of Minnesota
peanuts.
PILT.
Great question. I can pull up a chart to get you that specific number in a moment. I don't have it off the top of my head.
No worries, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
And so then we have kind of the third one, the down is pilot, which also stands for payment in lieu of taxes, but in this version, the O is included in the acronym. And so this is voluntary payments for tax exempt entities. So this does not currently exist in Ramsey County, but jurisdictions across the country have been using this to be able to ask for payments from specific tax exempt entities. Each jurisdiction does it a little bit differently, but the most kind of common entities is nonprofits, education institutions or health institutions, so hospitals, colleges and universities, and community-based organizations. And so, as I mentioned, we don't currently have any of this in Ramsey County or any of the cities in the county, but it's notable that St. Paul did do a study in 2017 with the Citizen League to explore this as an opportunity. Pilots are pretty common in the eastern part of the country where there's geographically more dense and small cities. There's very few counties that have pilots. It's mostly cities who are doing this with mixed results in terms of popularity and partnership. The key piece to this is that it's voluntary, so it's asking, could you please give us some money? And there's also been quite a few lawsuits across the country because of constitutional potential challenges of asking tax exempt entities to pay. So I think something for the radar that's happening in other places, and that I think is on a lot of people's memories and minds, since not too far ago, there had been pretty extensive work group and study coming from the city of St. Paul.
So this is asking the tax exempt properties to pay. It's not getting money from the state for those tax exempt properties, okay?
Sorry,
Commissioner
I
Nick-
have one example, just I
Okay.
think just put into the conversation here. So City of Roseville, for example, does have a pilot agreement with Northwestern. And so they voluntarily pay annually for economic development activities, so they specifically designed it so you can't pay to offset the cost of, we'll say, services, because you can't tax exempt uses. So instead, they structured the deal to pay for economic development activity, since they acknowledge that their campus takes quite a bit off the tax base, so.
And then does Roseville help pay, like for the roads? I mean, they already do anyway, but then what their benefit is that they get better, they just do it, huh? That's,
They have it pooled so they can use it anywhere in the city. And it's directed toward strengthening the tax base to basically offset what they're taking up.
Northwestern just does it.
Oh, interesting.
That's very. Commissioner McMurtry.
Coming out of the 2017 study, are there any takeaways that that you can share with us of what's St. Paul learned, like that, were there conversations with some of the institutions that would be, potentially volunteering this payment of any feedback or even interest in doing so?
Yeah, so I think some of the biggest things that came out of that study was a lot of frustration and potential legal challenges coming from some entities, specifically hospitals and education institutions who wrote letters that are included in that report. And so I think part of it was that there was this working group that not all entities were included in the conversation. And that's something also nationally that's become a best practice, is any jurisdiction that's thinking about this to go and to talk to those entities first. And so I think that there was some feelings that come up like in the report and the notes, as well as those letters, around not having been included early enough, like in the conversation. generally, the working group wasn't sure that this was going to fix any of the specific revenue challenges that the city was facing at that time. And so it wasn't a conclusive one way or another that they should move forward with it.
Have we had any conversations with the city on whether they would do a new setting?
I don't think we've currently had any conversations with new leadership since the 2017 study. It's almost entirely new leadership at the city of St. Paul, as well as we have a lot of new leaders in our space. So it's definitely an opportunity that we've talked about, of ways that we could be partnering on several different fronts, including seeing if they have an interest in reviving the concept.
And so, Madam Chair, Commissioner, that today is really a level set around educating on where they're at. And so they're, think of that as, you know, as the next step, potential evolution of this conversation.
And so the final thing we have on the slide is the Capital Complex County Host Program. And so this is one of the proposals that we're bringing to you all, that Director Chapman will dig into some of the details about momentarily. But this is an additional type of tilt that would be added specifically to Ramsey County as the host of the Capital Complex. Instead of being based off of acreage, which would disadvantage Ramsey County because we do not have enough acres to be able to do well in a formula based off of this. This one potential would be to base this off of estimated market value of the property included in the Capital Complex. And so this is one of the potential proposals that we're bringing forward, and we'll have some more details here in the next couple of slides of one of the ways this could look. We've intentionally pulled this out and not including it as part of the state PILT. That is also another opportunity that we can discuss, but really this would be creating something specific that has a formula not based off of acreage that would provide us with a better recouping of the lost revenue.
Yeah, Commissioner Ortega.
I have a question, maybe you and Nina could answer it. All of these proposals would require additional dollars, correct?
Right.
I mean, that's the bottom
Yeah.
line.
And that's where we're at. So I think, I'm gonna, yes, this is the conversation we have to have. You can maybe finish these last few slides. And then that's the conversation we're gonna, like, what is the best thing we think we can get out of a legislature where we need more money? So,
I mean,
Yeah.
the pot needs to grow.
exactly,
So the
right.
pot is not gonna grow.
Yeah.
But that's my point.
I have to think of other
That's my-
alternatives
yeah,
and introduce that to them and then let us let us have a conversation about
Right.
it. But I'm wondering, I like the proposal, the additional PIP funding added to Ramsey County as the host of the Capitol Complex. Do you think we can expand that to include because we also have so many nonprofits and churches and colleges? You know, I hear the 2017 study saying no one talked to us about that first. But I just, what's your thoughts about
And
that?
so I think that, Commissioner, I appreciate the question. I think that really that's talking about a couple of different things.
Okay.
Any legislation that has us trying to get any type of voluntary or payment from
We're not a
tax.
payment, we're not asking them to pay more, to pay anything, but recognizing the deficit we find ourselves in because of. Right, but you're asking in here for the Capitol Complex to pay taxes on it, is that?
Commissioner, I can spoke this, Madam Chair, Commissioner. So the challenge is that almost every county has some kind of exempt entities, whether it's daycare, schools, and those
Mhm.
similar things. The key to having a beneficial conversation at the legislature is to where are we different?
Mhm.
And the thing that makes us most different is the
The
capital
Capitol, okay,
complex.
got it.
Because if we start going down the road of all of these common occurrences,
Mhm.
we're
Then
gonna
we're
right
all
back,
the same.
we're gonna be right back in the
Yeah.
same pot that we're no different and we're gonna get a smaller piece of some other
Right.
thing. So what our idea or the thing that we're talking to you about today is ways of around this. Maybe we need to look at this from a different lens,
Okay.
where these traditional lenses keep skewing away from Hennepin and Ramsey. Are there other
We will
lenses
talk about here, just a moment.
that gets us Well, they're our biggest assets, so we.
We need that, we need that, we need it. Okay, all right.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Brand, that, the capital is in Ramsey
Okay.
County.
No.
So that's like the
Yes,
thing
yes.
that centers us right
Yeah.
back here, and the one thing that is a state amenity that is absolutely for all, and it is here.
Mhm.
And so we'll get into a little more,
Okay, I got
that's
it.
got a lot
Yeah.
more interesting numbers to share about that.
So we can move through these next couple, so we can get kind of into those nuts and bolts. So what we're looking at here, so this is for the state of Minnesota PILT, and so this is the amount that each county in the 7-county metro got, and so this is for 2025. And so as we can see, Ramsey and Carver get the least, with Washington getting substantially more than the rest. And so again, this is a formula based off of acreage, and Washington County has more eligible acreage than the other counties.
Mhm.
in them.
That's shocking.
Yeah.
Out of everything.
There we go. Okay.
And so then to get to some of the pieces earlier about outstate, so this is the top 5 counties in Minnesota for both state and federal PILT. So the far left purple bar is the amount that each of the top 5 gets for state. The middle is federal, and then the green is the total. So this is the top 5 compared to Ramsey County. We're on the far right, in case you didn't see our
Terrible.
So I think one of the important things to really recognize here is not only that these programs are really benefiting the counties outside of the metro more, but also NACO has recently released a report around potential changes to federal PILT, of it being either drastically reduced or completely removed. And so since there are other counties across Minnesota who receive substantial amounts of revenue from federal PILT, if those dollars go away and stop coming into the state, I think there is the potential that some of those counties will be going to the state of Minnesota and be asking for some additional support to be making up for that lost revenue, which could give us the opportunity to partner on something bigger with those counties, or could present some challenges for us to be able to move forward some of our PILT initiatives that we decide to do. So just something to keep in mind in terms of the broader context of kind of the ever changing and shifting pieces.
But you said that NACO was, they're fighting the reduction in PILT, right? Or what did you, how did you?
So they released a report saying that this is something that could see potential threats in terms of the level of specific advocacy they're doing. I'm not certain on that, but could look into it.
Pretty sure, like confident that they're fighting the reduction in PILT, because so many counties
Yeah.
need PILT. And we have a lot of counties in Minnesota that need PILT. And so that's why we were hoping we could combine ourselves into that PILT, formula, because we know that counties around the country are fighting for that to stay there, was what I understand. Yeah, Commissioner McMurtry.
Quick clarification, you mentioned for pilot that typically counties don't take lead on creating the pilots, mostly municipalities that do so? Okay.
Correct. So there are 2 counties that I was found, one in Arizona and one in Virginia. And there's about 60 cities that I found across the country that have some version of pilot.
How was the pilot going for the counties that implemented it?
And so they were newer to implementing it, and so they were also doing it on smaller, like they had a smaller scope, and so they were asking just specific entities that had large geographic footprints, and so larger nonprofits that had multiple buildings throughout the county. But they seemed to be saying that they were feeling that it was successful, and theirs was really based more off of a partnership with those specific entities, where some of the cities, it was more sweeping of any nonprofit or any academic institution.
Okay, yeah, Commissioner Moran.
Just for clarity, so these are the only counties that are getting federal PILT.
No.
These are the top.
Yep,
the top ones.
these are the top 5, and so the first 5 there of St. Louis, Couchiching, Beltrami, Itasca, Lake, and Cass get the most amount of PILT with both federal and state combined and added together. I can pull up in a moment, I can't remember specifically how many of the counties get federal PILT, but it is more than these ones.
But it's less, it's not.
And
Suspension.
these counties.
So
get-
Sorry, Gwen.
These counties get more built than some western state counties. We have a lot of federal land in these top northern counties. They're all northern. Minnesota
They're all border.
And they all border and they all have tons of federal land, forests
Yeah.
and things, and they get tons of pilt. Like I said, more than some western counties, and we always think of pilt being a big western United States thing, but that's our counties get this. And we should, yeah, I know, yeah, well, it'd be nice to get into that pilt formula, but we've seen where it's just changing that whole formula would be part of that.
And then I'll hand it over to Director Chapman.
So, let's talk about PILT and the positives and the negatives. So PILT is pretty much just based on acreage. And we know with our geographic constraints, we're not getting any bigger. Like I always tell my doctor, he says, "You're overweight." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm too short. I'm gonna go home and work on getting taller." Well, we can't do that at Ramsey County, right? We
Right.
can't get taller. So we are what we are. And so what if we reimagined some of the programs, right? What if these are all hypotheticals I'm talking about? Nothing like this exists. This is all in the ether that we grabbed out and tried to figure out. And it's just trying to look at things different ways that maybe reasonable people can come to an agreement. So if we look at the Capitol complex and the Capitol complex only, and this, as I defined earlier, is the list of buildings that I chose, not the list of buildings that were on that other website, but so there are some steps that would definitely have to take it. And with any new legislation, obviously, we know this is a long road, but let's lay out a couple of ideas that are possibilities as we're talking to people about our situation. So if you take the estimated market value, which is the top line on this bar of about 480 million in there, and you take the class rate and you got across there, we got the typical 2%, the 1.5%, the 1.25%, and the 1%. The most common class rates that are applied. The 2% represents, office industrial. The 1.2 is kind of your duplex or your vacant land rate. And then the 1% is the typical residential rate. So inside of those streams, what would each of those class rates develop for us? You can see the next line down is the tax capacity. That's generated from the 2% down to the 1% rate. And then we applied the St. Paul typical tax rate that we've had right now. Now, this is just not going through the whole tax formula. This is more of a shotgun, a spitball approach to give you a really idea of what it could be. So there's the current kind of typical tax rate for St. Paul, 146.49. And then the bottom is the amount of dollars this would generate as a payment. So the 14, the 10, the 8, and the 7. So this is just one hypothetical way of realizing what kind of money we're talking about for this area. Let's go to the next slide to show the other way of doing this.
This is the extra page that is the new slide.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about this and not have a visual, and I thought, no, I better just put it on paper. It's a little easier. So it's a little different color, but that's okay. It conveys a message. So,
That's a question. There's a question.
yes.
I saw so many parking lots. How do you do those?
That would be something to talk about too,
Okay, there were
because
so many.
Yeah. the way we typically, that value is captured inside of that value. And parking lots typically are based on the income approach of how much they can generate per space. But that value is captured in a lot of that value that I have there. All of those parking lots are part of that value too, because they're analogous. You need one supports the other.
Yeah.
You can't have a building without the parking
Right.
to support the building. So in my calculations, parking lots are included in the
Okay.
EMD.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let's move on to a different way of looking at it. Now, in this calculation, the square footage of the parking lots is not considered, but this is just the square footage of those buildings down there. And we're at about 5.2 million square feet of area that is, office and all the different complexes, right? So PILT, always, they talk about buck per acre or buck per this or whatever. Well, what if it was a buck per foot? Well, then it would be $5 million to us. What if it was $2 per foot? Well, then it'd be $10 million for us. $3, $4, you know, you can go on. And this, I think, would be kind of a, if it ever got to the point where we're finally in a space, this probably is the formula that's the most stable, the most like the PILT formula that people would understand and be the most this is the easiest way to do this because it's not requiring a market value every year. You just look at the amount of square footage and you could say if it's between X square footage and X square footage, you get this amount or, you know, and then, so it's really a stable way of doing it. And so from when we're trying to explain this to legislative partners, this approach might actually be the easiest and most reasonable approach to show a way to get it, if it ever gets to the phase of, you know, of this. So those are just a couple of musings of assessment nerds. Realize that this is not, I just want to say it one more time, this is not anything that has ever been out there or tried or talked about. This is all conjecture on our part.
I like innovation. I like this.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, it's not hopeless and he's our nerd.
Yeah.
We love creative thinking, we love thinking about what opportunities might we have that might be available, so now we're having discussion, so should Jevin say.
Just building off of the square footage argument, while this would be a capital complex host program, which would be specific to any county who happens to be the host of our state capital, which would be us. But for a conversation are there other state buildings in the state of Minnesota that should this get traction? That somebody else in another county would say, well, we also have a state complex. And would there be other areas we should be aware of that may also raise their hand and say, we love that, we too have state buildings that are taking up our tax? Are there other areas that may have this?
Yeah, and Madam Chair, Commissioner, we have had that conversation. We've identified some of what that could look like. There's a couple things at play here. When you saw the map that Pat put together, which has all the properties we're talking about in the capital complex, that's some of the most valuable land in the state of Minnesota. So I think that is worth part of the conversation, and that many of the other facilities are in greater Minnesota where they can develop anywhere in those spaces. They've got opportunities still with open space to develop, and we don't have that. So yes, to both parts of that. Yes, there are other properties that may be interested in latching onto this. There's still a uniqueness to the capital complex for us in this conversation, but there are other properties.
And the reason why I bring that up is there may be natural allies, but also there may be pushback for like, this is opening up a door that could get kicked open by a lot of counties. So it'd be good to know because the square footage of developed properties is a pretty finite and calculable thing. It would be good to know and to say, well, here would be the maximum what currently is in place. So that it's different than 87 counties wanting a piece. It would be, there's only X number of square footage. I'm just curious, I mean, it would be good to have that sense, because I know that if I were a legislator, that would be my first question, like, what are we opening ourselves up to?
And I would say, I was thinking the same thing, that there's state buildings and then there's capital complex buildings. So you're right, if we open it up to all state buildings, we have a lot more state buildings that we can maybe get more revenue out of too. And probably every county has some state facilities in it. And then it brings me to the federal facilities that we don't get money off of, like federal courthouses and things. We don't get any revenue from those either, right? So we could, I mean, what about the federal courthouse and the federal, whatever, post office? I don't know.
That's correct, ma'am. Commissioner Jevons saying, we have state agency buildings, like a lot of the infrastructure for the state, in addition to the capital complex, we didn't include in it. So I don't wanna speak out of, I'm just not sure that there's a county that has as much of that. as
Yeah.
us. I can't imagine there would be any, I would.
So-
Ding, 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 ding,
We
ding.
couldn't distinguish, right?
Yeah.
And kind of to bridge to our
County manager.
lunch discussion, you know, like when we talked about the sheriff and all the expectations around,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
most recently, the No King's March, you know, that there's pressure on our
Right.
public safety because of the complex. So that is another opportunity for us to make a pitch.
So I guess to that point, you know, not only would there be others, other counties that have state buildings, but we have other state buildings
Mhm.
here. So it would be like lovely, I would think to also see that captured.
Yeah, if we expand beyond Capitol Complex building, which would incorporate all that, yes.
So that wouldn't be a negative if there was other counties that had state buildings, right? So that we can act, so it wouldn't be just specific to Ramsey County. It may be just less that could align with this proposal. So it wouldn't be a bad thing according to Chair Gomez, who said, how can we make this like it's a state initiative, right? And we can find those partners who align with what you're proposing. So it's not a negative, it can be a good thing because she wants to see that. But we're bringing something to her that has not been into the body, that has not been introduced before to create some type of equity within the process. And I wouldn't use the word argument in introducing this statement, right? Yeah, it wouldn't, right?
And
But it's possible.
and
My question though, my question is, if we do this, are we expanding the dollars? Or are we just saying we need to recoup?
It's all coming from the same pot of money, right?
Yeah.
So,
As it is,
yeah.
okay.
I had a response for I think the previous.
So, Commissioner, Madam Chair, some of the things to think about. Yes, there's exposure here because it's never been thought of before, so nobody's ever really gone down the road of maybe doing something like this. So, yeah, the untold things that could get attached as things travel down a legislative path is the part of doing business, and partners really reveal themselves a lot of the times when you introduce an idea and things expand. I think the most reasonable expansion that we could expect would be state universities being sought after in some of the areas, you know, like Morris, where they got a big campus, or, you know, Itasca, they've got a U of M campus up there, Duluth, obviously the state universities.
I was thinking state prisons.
yeah, so
Yes.
it's good to get allies, and it just makes
Right.
more money that we need to put
I
into the
think
pot then.
yeah, I
More and
think-
more money we need from the state, and that's the harder part too. So I see both. County manager then.
Yeah, I know we're getting closer to time, so I just wanna make sure we get some really good takeaways on some of the next things that we definitely can do regardless of which direction you decide to go. So what I heard from the very beginning was there's some good information here and I've seen it packaged better than I've seen previously. So what I'd like to do is pull in our communications team, think about how we get some strategic communications around how we're sharing this information. We talked about doing like hot topics with our delegation. I think this should be front and center.
Yeah.
Just to do some early education and advocacy, so you all have some things to, regardless of which of these we pitch, there's a baseline of information here that we have to tell our story. Because we had good turnout at our legislative budget meeting and they heard the pressure around the property tax. And I think we have to tie this back to, we're being proactive, trying to think about all these things. I do think that one slide with the balancing of the strategies is really critical because we don't want them to think, well, we're putting all our eggs in this basket. No, we're doing Park at River's Edge. We're doing Rice Street Commons. We're doing, like, there's a lot of things that we're focused on to try to do this. And this is just one of a variety of strategies, but this is the one that you can help us significantly on by one, being able to articulate the challenge as a Ramsey County legislator, and the opportunity. And then, you know, I guess it's up to you guys to talk a little more about where we think we can get the most traction for any advocacy in a policy, in a primarily policy year, right? As we go forward, so.
Absolutely. Jensen.
Another piece that I would love to throw into this communication piece, along with our legislative affairs and our government affairs, is the idea of, I believe it or not, as many constituents and constituent organizations that have reached out to our District 1 office with concerns of the proposed tax levy. Whereas many saying, but the property taxes are regressive. And so these are individuals, and advocacy groups who are saying, it's not as if we don't understand you, that the revenue that you're trying to generate is important to provide mandated and important mission-driven services at the county. That the way that you're getting it is regressive. And I guess for me, I would love to be able to articulate to those groups, yes, we also recognize that, and we would love their support with our other government bodies to figure out how collectively as a state we can have less regressive taxes as we're having these large intergovernmental shifts down to local governments. And I think we have people who are asking us to help them help us. And so any documentation I think can also would be helpful for us to be able to have it to go to individual advocates and or advocating organizations.
To help us tell that story.
And I, as I'm thinking about where the revenue is coming from, well, if we tax if we tax the actual entities, that is the state generally, right? Unless it's a church or, unless it's a religious organization, then we're taxing that. And so it's this capital complex, whether we get money from the state for this or whether we tax the capital complex buildings, which would need legislation. You can't do it, right?
It's unconstitutional.
Yeah, okay. So I want to make sure I understood that. Unconstitutional to tax and not tax exempt property. We'd have to change the constitution, which we're not going to do.
We're not trying to. do it.
So that will, yeah. So this has to be revenue, this has to be a revenue source from the state to acknowledge the capital complex.
Yeah, it's just expanding.
Yeah, whatever you
Has
call
its pills,
it, CPAC.
right?
It's right.
We just expanded.
It's a category of, right, so I just want to make sure
Yes and
that's
no.
what we're doing.
Madam
Yeah.
Chair, Commissioner, the PILT argument, what this is would be a different look at what PILT is. And the positive about using money that is typically PILT is like what Director Kutso was saying with income tax and all of that going into the general fund. This is a less regressive way to put some of that money back into the community where it can be used for.
That's
For the
the
day.
argument.
And we
that's
couldn't
part
take
of it.
this out of the PILT fund though, because it's a separate thing of PILT, right?
It's challenging to call it PILT just because of the way
Yes.
people think about it,
Yeah.
so it's PILT adjacent.
Right, it's adjacent, right, I think Jason.
A different program and
Yeah.
some safety in having a program of your own.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that,
And
okay.
we did take some care to remove PILT in the area wherever we could.
Yeah,
from
I
the
see that.
conversation, just
Okay.
because it has a legal definition.
Okay.
And so we're thinking
It's a
of it
policy
as.
deal. We can change that language.
Yeah, so yeah, but calling it the Capital County Host Program, I like that, CHP, let's make our own, have it be our own program, a statewide program, but just for us, yeah.
Really quick here,
Sure.
for next steps when it comes to the legislature, are we, for the CP, are we proposing those two things, the work group and the change of the tax equalization formula, or? I just want to understand what are these our next steps, or is there something else happening?
Yeah, so, Madam Chair, Commissioner McMurtry, these are the options that we have from the conversation, the information we put together. So these are 4 approaches we could take, or parts of these approaches, or all 4 of them. So the first being to focus on the part of the CPA formula that does not work for us and advocate that it be changed. And there's a couple ways to do that: eliminate the multiplier or phase it out. The second one on CPA is to have a study that's mandated to come back with a more equitable formula. A version of which was starting to move in the past. And the versions that are associated with some sort of payment that's either a PILT, which would be to build it into the PILT program, but have a set aside for something that's different. That would be our capital complex, or have a different program altogether that's not called PILT. And that's probably the more desirable approach. It has no strings to the way that people think about these other things, and it acknowledges that our situation is unique.
Was there a portion that you mentioned before of maybe we can get more money out of the county need aid portion of it versus the type equalization?
If there, that would require the legislature to shift resources in their formula towards the need part of the formula, and the other part of that is. As they look forward to a deficit in their future biennial budget, that's when they've typically cut program aid and LGA, city aid. If they were to cut it only from the side that we are already only getting a quarter of, that would be advantageous to us relative to 85 other counties. So there's two ways to look at that.
Yeah.
So that's the conversation we have, maybe we'll have time at our workshop in our legislative, I'm like, love a little bit, I love a lot of these. We got Commissioner Dennison and Commissioner Ortega.
Given that the option D, to create the new program, the capital complex county hosts, separates itself from PILT. I think what's missing from this presentation, but we touched on in some of our comments in previous workshops, is a calculation perhaps from the different agencies that are involved in additional costs and support for hosting such a place. So whether that's our sheriff's department, whether that's other agencies, the idea of what cost is it for us to physically have to host. And that includes all of the guests it includes our legislators and the staff, it involves all the people who come to do business here in the town. And it comes to anybody who wants to voice their opinions about things, whether that is protesters or marchers or anything else that are going on, to make sure that there are costs involved that aren't captured in this pieces. And I think those things have to be very, very explicitly discussed, even if we don't have a specific dollar amount, to say, you can imagine, these are the additional stressors. We welcome being the host, but there's a cost involved to help us create a safe space for people to be able to engage with their state government.
Great, I agree. Commissioner Ortega.
You know, with either one of these, I mean, either B or D. Have we calculated what extra money we would need? I mean. I guess I'm being a little bit pessimistic that we need to increase the pot to get a new formula in. I don't see the other counties giving up. I mean, if we're up against 85 counties.
This is what you would need right here.
Yeah, and where this is different, Commissioner, from the CPA change, like creating something or adding it on to.
I know, but even if you create D,
Right.
how much, what would that be? What is that dollar amount?
It's specific to the capital complex, it's this.
Yes.
So the square
It'll be
footage. or the-
21 million.
Yeah,
If we were
Okay.
at 4.
from
if
5
we
to
were
21, yeah.
Otherwise, 3,
What
2,
we
1, they'll say,
It could
well,
be
here's
between 5.
1%, here's 1.
Would it be 5 million extra?
It would be 5 million extra that isn't currently allocated to counties, so it would have to come
What
from
is it?
Yeah,
general fund some.
not out of the general, it's not out of the mixed pot. It's
Yeah,
out of the-
yeah.
out of the pot over here. We
One of
gotta
the
get-
primary reasons this concept has continued to move and have more conversations because it doesn't this alone doesn't require
I-
changing the CPA.
No, I
formula,
get it.
And
It's
that's,
so good. I'm just saying, no matter what path you take, it's
Yeah.
gonna require more money.
But I think it's worth like taking this to the legislature.
Yeah.
Introducing it and having a conversation
I
about it.
agree.
Right, and in fact, even like saying,
get-
create a
yeah.
work group to try to figure this out, right? But it's the not having a conversation and not
I
defending
agree,
our
I
work
agree.
is.
I agree.
and
But
that's,
I like to get it done too, besides having the
Yeah,
conversation.
at its core, it's highlighting in dollar amounts.
Yeah.
How we're different and how we're disadvantaged, and I think that's the center of the conversation around why this is needed.
Okay, I just very quickly, if we, like, let's say we get what we want and we ask for, ideally, what does that do for us besides get us more money? Like, I understand that, but does that allow us then to reduce our levy and our burden on our homeowners and our taxpayers? So I think that's like key too, that we need to make sure that we talk about as well, like by us being part of this formulation fairly, we're able to reduce the tax burden on our taxpayers.
And exactly, Commissioner
Yeah.
Miller, that's where we started.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
I mean,
levy
yeah.
conversation. So it's about $4 million for a percent of our levy. So, you know, just like in real numbers, you look at these numbers, you can see how that plays out.
1 percentage point.
And it's every year, you know, each of these are annualized, so they're not,
Yeah.
so.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Well, this is really, really amazing. Thank you. I think we're all really, hopeful about this conversation and really, excited about this great, information that you provided. Thank you for being creative and looking for things that we can look at. And I know we're all excited about it and we're gonna be doing a workshop on our legislative package and we'll get more clarity around how we proceed with this. Cause we'd love to obviously have conversations with our government relations people. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned and in a couple minutes, we're gonna, well, 5 minutes.